Hey guys, it's Ryan here with HobbiesofaMan. Once again, and today we're going to be doing our review for Eerie Archive number 1. Now, quick history about Eerie. Apparently it was made by this guy, Warren, who was an editor, and he created a bunch of different magazines. I think he created 3 specifically, and then a bunch of other ones were helped to be made by him. So there was Creepy, then Eerie, then Vampirella. Those 3 were kind of big major parts. Vampirella ended up with Dynamite, and Dark Horse ended up taking most of the Warren stuff as far as I remember. There's also a sci-fi magazine called 1984, and I think this was a competitor or actually kind of inspired by Metal Hurlant or actually Heavy Metal. But I'm not really sure about that. I know Heavy Metal is its own brand now, and that's pretty different from what it is now. And I think there was an issue where Whatnot Publishing, who is now Massive Publishing, was going to start publishing the Heavy Metal magazine again, but they actually ended up recently stating that they're not going to do so at all because there was issues with the Heavy Metal brand and the people that run it, right? So, yeah, but we're not focusing on Heavy Metal. We're focusing on Eerie. And the Archive Volume 1 is basically a trade paperback compilation of 5 magazines. And there's 29 of these, as far as I remember. And I have all of them because there was a Humble Bundle about a month ago at this point that had all of them, plus a few extras like Eerie Presents El Cid and Eerie Presents The Hunter, and Eerie Volumes 1 through 4, which were Dark Horse versions of Eerie. And Eerie Archive 1 collects the first 5 issues of the original run of the magazine when Warren or whatever was, in charge of this brand, right? And each issue has a bunch of short stories. And you notice in this, this edition that they're still kind of figuring out what the right type of thing to put in these is, in the sense that there's a bunch of different random like in-betweeners or things that are kind of like added value for the comic book or for the magazine that they kind of change and move around. Like there's Uncle Ernie or Cousin Ernie at the beginning, Cousin Eerie at the beginning, and then sometimes he's at the end, sometimes he's in the middle. Then they do these like splash page, like pinup things that are about different monsters. So there's a vampire one, a werewolf one, Frankenstein had one as well, I think. And then there's like these like pictures or ads, I guess, about old, like I guess it would be cassettes or VHS tapes of old horror movies. And I think this actually is related directly to the magazine that came before, because every volume starts with the guys that brought you film to a magazine or something. Like it was some weird thing. And these extras kind of changed throughout the 5 issues. But the quality of the stories is actually consistently pretty high. I was actually pretty happy with this. So issue 1 has a bunch of stories, and it's pretty interesting. It's actually a really good start. I really enjoyed my time with this first issue. It was all mostly supernatural stuff. Nothing was necessarily scary, and I don't necessarily think that it would ever actually be scary. There's a difference between visualizing something and seeing something drawn and reading it and seeing it on television, right? Like, I don't like scary movies. I don't enjoy them. Mostly, it's not even the images. It's actually the music that gets me. Like, sometimes I don't even like watching like alien documentaries that use like scary music because like the situation is already naturally creepy. Like this idea of like aliens is kind of scary, right? Conceptually. But then adding the music doesn't really help me be interested. It actually kind of deters me from being interested because I don't like that sort of music, right? So, yeah, but this doesn't really have anything scary in it. However, some of the premises are pretty good, and the artwork is overall really fantastic for everyone, for every single one of these issues, right? So, in issue 1, the story that I liked the best was called Death Plane, which was a story about these World War I or World War II fighter jet pilots who were being stalked by this ghostly plane. And the reveal at the end is really good. I liked it a lot. However, I do want to say that based on the covers that I know are associated with this, I was expecting a little bit more TNA, as in, more fan service or more tits and ass, if you want to be very direct. And in the first 5 volumes, there really wasn't much. There were some female characters that showed up, and it was actually quite rare that they did. And they were like attractive, pretty, but there wasn't really any overt eroticism or sexuality to them, which is not a problem in and of itself. But I always find that when I think of scary movies, I think of like scary movies from like 80s or like the early 90s or late 90s, and I always think of like a certain level of like eroticism combined with the scary movie, right? Like scary concepts also have this certain level of like attraction to them because they are taboo, right? And I really feel like there was a distinct lack of any of that in any of the stories here. It's not a problem. It is an observation. It's something that I was expecting because I don't really see why anyone would like hold these in the regard that they do without some fan service. But there hasn't been any yet. I'm guessing that there's going to be some later. But generally, the stories are good. I did enjoy them. And for the price that I paid, which was like 50 cents per book, basically, since it was only $18 for the whole set, I'm very happy with my purchase, right? So, yeah, moving on to issue number 2. There's this weird color page with cousin Eerie. There's this Frankenstein pastiche. And the good story here is The Eye of the Beholder. And I think the other story was called Ahead of the Game. I think that was the other story that I really enjoyed. Eye of the Beholder was very, very good. I liked it a lot. The Monster Gallery was also interesting here. And Cousin Eerie's comments were really funny in this issue. In issue 3, I would say that I love the cover a lot. There's a lot of really good stories here, specifically The Soul of Horror, I think is what it was called. The Lighthouse and The Monument. The Monument was actually the best one, in my opinion. With the second best being The Full Phantom Fright. That one was actually what inspires the cover at this point. The Full Phantom Fright deals with a ocean creature, and the cover for this issue, if I remember correctly, is the one with the ocean monster, and I think it's a Frazetta cover. So this one's pretty good. Issue 4 is actually the only one that I didn't love as much. Like, I felt bored through most of it, and I'm not really sure what it was. Maybe it was I'd been reading too many of these in one go, but at this point I did get a little bit bored. The art for Hatchet Man, which is one of the stories, was really interesting. It was quite different from everything else in this series so far. And Gnawing Fear was good, as well as Island at the World's End was also really great. This one almost had this kind of Cersei's Island kind of vibe to it, and also was probably the closest you would get to horror story with eroticism so far. And it was really interesting. I liked it a lot. I thought it was probably one of the better stories, even though it was actually in the issue I liked the least. So there you go. Issue 5 also has a great cover. I liked all of the stories. All of them were actually pretty awesome, except for one of them called A Matter of Routine. And I think Griswold's File was also not that enjoyable here. So I guess out of like the 6 stories, only 4 of them were good, but that is a majority, right? So there you go. Overall, my experience with Eerie Archive 1 was wonderful. I really enjoyed myself. I had a lot of fun. It was a very enjoyable thing to read during the Halloween season, during the spooky season. And yeah, I don't really have any complaints, any real complaints. Like for the price that I paid, the fact that it was digital so I could zoom in and enjoy the artwork as much as I wanted, the faithfulness of like recreating the colors of the original, which I'm guessing they did quite well, or at least I didn't see any glaring changes being made that really affected it negatively. And yeah, overall fantastic. If I didn't want to make a a comment or something that I would have liked to see more, it is that thing about that kind of more like a little bit of TNA would have gone a long way. Like I said, it's not necessary. It is not something I necessarily want in everything or expect in everything. But when I think of horror and when I think of scary concepts, I also think of this idea of attraction, right? And I was expecting some eroticism to show up. The fact that it didn't is not disappointing necessarily, but it is kind of like unexpected. I was expecting it and I didn't get it, and so that's why I'm hammering so much on the point. But otherwise, fantastic. My experience would be a 9 out of 10 with these books, or a 4.5 out of 5 if you want to keep to the 5-point scale. I recommend you guys get your hands on these as much, as soon as possible in whatever capacity you can, as long as it's, paid. I definitely hope that you guys don't go and get these offline for free. I'm sure you can, but I would prefer that you don't, right? But, you do you. If you want to look at a physical edition of these, Michael K. Vaughan features them on some of his videos sometimes. I don't have any video off the top of my head that I can tell you has these in it, but he does have a few physical collections, and I actually asked him to make a video about them, and he said he would eventually, but he just doesn't have the time to do so yet. So he's going to get around to it at some point, right? So those are my thoughts on Eerie. Let me know what you guys thought. Thank you guys very much for watching. And I have another review for this series coming out next month where I talk about Archive 2, right? So see you guys in a few weeks.